welcome to the hardware tracking episode where we go through what hardware you will need to set up camera tracking for virtual production. The tracking hardware we purchased was a complete kit. It was the Vive Pro Complete Kit, where it comprises of a headset, 2 hand controllers, and 2 base stations or lighthouses. We actually purchased additional hardware, which was the Vive tracking puck, where this really does nothing but track. So I'll talk about all of these pieces of hardware and why they're necessary. Initially, we bought a couple of these base stations and this tracker, thinking, well, that's all we need. And after some frustration, we figured out that it actually doesn't work. We just could not get these two talking with the software. It was later we realized that the software is actually looking for the headset. This is the first thing the software looks for. When the software finds the headset, it makes this ID 0, and then it brings in the rest of the hardware. So while we actually won't be using this headset, the software won't work without it. That's why I suggested, buy the complete kit. That way you have everything necessary. So it also comes with a couple of controllers because this is gaming software. Now, you could just use these controllers to track the camera. You would need to attach this to the camera and make sure it's attached fairly solidly so it doesn't vibrate. Any vibrations, it's going to upset the tracking. So really, you don't need this puck if you can secure this to your camera. And if that's the way you want to go, then I'll leave that to you, how you secure this to your camera. But the tracking puck comes with a screw that we can screw it onto a shoe device and connect this to our camera. We'll be facing this puck forward. It won't be upright, it'll be forward, and we have the charging port on top. That's the alignment we've set up for our tracking equipment. Talking about the base station, the base stations are what makes this whole system work. You get 2 in the system, and if you think 2 base stations will track around 5 square meters or 16.5 square feet. So why do we need 2? Well, if I only have 1 and it's behind me or beside me and this gets obscured by my body, we lose tracking. So that's why we have 2. We normally set them up diagonally to each other so we can, there's no way that I can hide this from the base stations. Okay, let's talk about the actual computer that's running all of the graphics. In the most basic sense, what it is a very high-end gaming machine. There are a few caveats on that because we're dealing with just more than just gaming. So let's start with the CPU that we're using. All our computers here run Intel CPUs, but at the time we came to purchase this, AMD had a better CPU for a better price. So we went with AMD. What we have in here is the AMD Ryzen 5000 series CPU. Now you think, well, if you're doing graphics, why do you need a CPU to do graphics? Well, there are components of the software that uses the CPU. It does calculations, maths, equations, and things like that which CPUs are really good at. So Also in the creation of the 3D environment, or in the case of the software it's called levels. So the creation of levels, it requires a lot of computing power to recalculate lights, stream in textures, and just general things like that. We noticed a huge performance improvement when we did our initial testing on a slower machine, and when we got this machine, we were able to use the software more effectively and efficiently. Things just happened a lot quicker. So if we didn't have that fast CPU, things would take a lot longer productivity would be slowed down. So purchase the fastest CPU you can buy. We also install a lot of RAM, 64 gig of RAM on it. And when I was talking to the salesman who was going to actually build the machine for us, I asked him, the motherboard has 4 RAM slots. Should we just put 2 sticks of RAM in, and then later we can put in another 2 sticks of RAM? So he asked me this question: when will you put another 2 sticks of RAM? When will you upgrade RAM? And I was saying, well, at the very least a year's time. So he said to me, by the time you want to upgrade that RAM, the RAM prices are going to be so low that, and the other thing is, you might not be able to find this compatible RAM, might not be available, so you're going to have to replace what you have there. The other thing he said to me was, if you populate all 4 slots on the motherboard with RAM rather than just 2 slots, it's actually a little bit of a performance boost. So we populated all 4 slots of RAM on the motherboard because it's going to give us a little bit of performance boost. And if we do need to upgrade, which we probably don't need to, but if we did need to upgrade, we're going to have to probably replace that RAM anyway if we just had bought 2 sticks, because the new RAM that's out won't be compatible. So just take that into consideration. We also installed some very fast hard drives. We installed a couple of M.2 hard drives, which we'll be storing our textures on. So the textures for the graphics are going to load in a lot quicker off an M.2 hard drive. But we also installed some very large, very fast SSD hard drives for storage. So we just have that there as well. Graphics cards. Let's talk about graphics cards. What graphics card did we buy? As of right now, there are only 2 manufacturers of graphics cards. Intel is making their own one, but it's not available yet. So we have AMD and NVIDIA. And when we were looking at graphics cards, it came down to a couple of things of which manufacturer we went with and what graphics cards. The AMD, we were looking heavily at the AMD graphics cards because it works really well with the AMD processor that we have in the computer. You can actually share the RAM, which was a huge bonus for us. But it came down, we eventually bought the NVIDIA because of one thing: ray tracing. And I'll talk about ray tracing in a minute if you don't know what it is. So AMD doesn't have hardware ray tracing, and that's what tipped us over to NVIDIA. So what is ray tracing? Ray tracing is real-time shadows, real-time reflections, and real-time refractions. And I'll show you a clip of what that looks like in a minute. So that's what swayed us as to what graphics cards to buy. Now, you can buy a really good NVIDIA graphics card that is for gaming, but here's the thing: this machine is not strictly a gaming machine. It's for virtual production. What do we need in virtual production? We need high resolution textures. So that means the graphics cards that we have in these machines have to have a lot of RAM. So the graphics card we bought was the NVIDIA RTX 3090, only because it's that graphics card that has the most RAM on board, 24 gig. If I show you an example of low resolution textures compared to high resolution textures with ray tracing, you'll see the difference in quality that is required. Here we have a popular game, Minecraft, using low resolution textures. Now if we show you that exact same game using high resolution textures and ray tracing, it just jumps up so much more to more realism. And realism is what we are wanting. So we need to use high resolution textures. Those textures have to go somewhere. Where do they go? The graphics card. If we don't have enough RAM on the graphics card, the system is going to be slowed down by streaming in textures as the camera gets closer to a particular object with a particular texture. It will then stream out textures in the background and replace them with low resolution versions. This streaming in and out is going to hit performance. You'll also see some visual artifacting going on. So why do we need the RTX 3090? Because of the amount of RAM it has on the graphics card. So that's basically what we have in our machine. We put a lot of research into actually the components we needed to purchase for it, trying to maximize bang for buck. So if what I've said has confused you and you don't know what I'm talking about, then find someone you trust who can interpret what I've said and enable you to purchase a machine for virtual production. So till next time, thank you for watching.